afternoon, everyone, and welcome to today's Illuminating conversation. My name is Rachel Weinstein, one of the past presidents of Illuminate, and we're thrilled to have you here today. Illuminate empowers Jewish women leaders and philanthropists who are advancing gender equity and social change. We're building a global feminist network by investing in Jewish women not-for-profit leaders who are tackling some of society's most pressing issues here in the United States, in Israel, and around the globe. At the same time, we are also empowering feminist philanthropists by educating them on emergent issues and best practices. In that spirit, I'm delighted to sit in conversation today with Mary Zamore, Executive Director of the Women's Rabbinic Network and one of the incredible leaders in our network. WRN is a partner organization of the Reform Movement representing female, non-binary, and gender-fluid rabbis and advocating their values and voices. Mary has been a prominent feminist leader in the Jewish communal world for decades, and I'm thrilled to be speaking with her today. Welcome, Mary.
Thank you, Rachel, and thank you to Elluminate.
Yes, you were ordained in 1997. What inspired you to become a rabbi, and what led you to the Women's Rabbinic Network?
I grew up in an active Reform home, and I'm proud to say that with our son, that we represent 5 generations who have participated in the Reform movement. And my family on both sides, from my mother and father, were always active in synagogues as lay people for generations. And in my years right before going to college, in fact, I started to get very excited about Judaism in my own right. And soon after, I had this really thunderbolt thought, wow, I could be a rabbi. And I didn't grow up, people often ask, was my father a rabbi, my grandfather, influence, things like that. I was influenced by many people demonstrating what active Judaism looked like. But for me, it was kind of a left field switch for me, and one that has served me well. Um,
Amazing.
yeah.
And I imagine at that time, probably there weren't so many, female rabbi role models in your life, so that you still went for that. It's amazing.
Absolutely. I certainly knew about Sally Priesand, and I didn't remember it at the time, but many years later, I discovered that I actually spoke about her at my bat mitzvah. And it was one of the anniversaries and of her ordination, and I did speak about her. And she and the early women rabbis that we call Vatikot, our pioneers, were amazing role models from afar. And then when I was in rabbinic school, I became active in WRN as a student. Frankly, the bias that I was feeling was so strong that it was a real refuge for me.
Mm.
And at the time, if you had asked me in the years prior in college and high school, would you end up leading a feminist organization, classically women's organization? I would have said absolutely not. It was not my view of feminism. The way I articulated my feminism is that I had to be neck and neck with men, with boys, that I had to be in that mixed environment, striving to show that I could do it. And it was in rabbinical school that I found that refuge in this community that was telling me that I could do whatever I wanted, that I could be a Jewish leader, when frankly a lot of people in the Jewish world were subtly and not so subtly sending me the message that I could only belong in a very tight, small box.
Mm. Yeah. Well, I'd love to hear more about, what WRN does and sort of what it gave you in that moment and now how it's grown and what it continued to do.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. So Sally Priesand was ordained in 1972 and opened the door for a permanent path for women being ordained as rabbis, which then influenced, of course, the other movements of Judaism, and that story continues to unfold, but also people of many different identities to realize that they too could be Jewish leaders as rabbis, as cantors, as educators, professionals, and as lay leaders. And again, that story continues to unfold. By the mid 1970s, at the Cincinnati campus and the New York campus of Hebrew Union College Jewish Institute of Religion, women were starting to gather together again in the face of great discrimination, bias, misogyny, and sometimes harassment. And so they clung together. And by 1980, those two organic movements joined together to be the Women's Rabbinic Network. And here we are over 45 years later, looking towards our 50th anniversary. And we continue to, frankly, do many of the same things, although much progress has been made. We always celebrate our progress, record our history, and ensure that we continue to work on the things that inspired the rabbis who founded us, which, of course, unfortunately, we still need to work on. Things like creating safe communities, making sure that they are free of sexual harassment, abuse, and all forms of discrimination, making sure that there is equity in hiring processes, in advancement, in supervision, and in pay, to
Mm.
ensure that people have pay, family, and medical leave, and that this is a human right that we support as communities, and to make sure that there are many different ways to lead, that it's not just one way to look like a Jewish leader, not one way to be a Jewish leader, and to really go into our tradition and to find the great variety of voices that already exist there and to expand on them.
Amazing. Can you talk a little bit about how your membership has evolved, right? The name is Women's Rabbinic Network, but
Mhm.
now you're servicing a wider community of also gender fluid and non-binary rabbis. How and when did that evolution occur?
Yeah, so that happened about 3, 4 years ago. We're very proud of that work, and frankly, it was our younger board members and members who came to us and said, you know, you need to do this. You are not serving the community as well as you could be. And we listened. We did a lot of education work and thought as a board, and then we did a lot of education and listening and thinking together as a organization, and then we had our entire membership vote on it, and it was really amazing to see how unified we were in that decision. And it was especially important to us because we discovered that there were members of WRN who were already identifying as non-binary gender fluid. And we wanted them to be able to show up with their fullest identities and to feel comfortable in the community and not to feel distant from us or somehow othered by us, but really celebrated by us. So that was important to us. And like any other organization, we all have continued work to do on culture change, and that's something I think is an ongoing story for all of us.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I can only say personally that I admire that the work that the reform movement has done to be so inclusive and welcoming, in this space, with sexuality, with interfaith families. I mean, the reform movement really leads the way. So it's
Yeah.
really it's incredible. Um, I would love to talk a little bit more about some of your initiatives. And I think I remember first meeting you probably more than a decade ago,
Mhm.
because Elluminate, in our former incarnation as the Jewish Women's Foundation of New York, supported one of your big initiatives, which is the Reform Pay Equity Initiative. So I'd love for you to share a little bit about what that initiative entails and what it has achieved.
Absolutely. I'm thrilled to talk about this and to continue to thank Illuminate. for that seed money. And I want to just point out, because I should have said it before, so at WRN, all of our rabbi members are also members of the Central Conference of American Rabbis. This is important because we're all beholden to the ethics code and to that community, which is work that we've been instrumental in and in trying to strengthen the ethics code and process. And so it's very important to us that that's our identity and that we're a partner group of the reform movement, as you said earlier.
Yeah.
However, our work is designed to help everyone. It's not just to help our niche group of WN rabbis. It's not there just to help professionals in the reform movement. Everything that we create is open to the rest of the Jewish world, and we are a resource to the rest of the Jewish world, often doing consultations to make the work have full impact. So let me tell you about what WN has done with the very generous seed money that Elluminate gave us. That we were been able, in partnership with the Women of Reform Judaism, to bring all the partners of the Reform movement, so 17 organizations, to be able to understand and study and then create interventions and do longitudinal, qualitative, and quantitative data collection around pay equity through the gender lens. And this is really exciting work. It's hard work because it is not just one straight arrow forward. But it is really one of the wonderful things that Reform Judaism has done for equity in recent years, and it's because of Illuminate seed money. And so we have five different partner organizations within the Reform movement that are for professionals. So representing the rabbis, the cantors, the educators, early childhood educators, administrators, executive directors. And then there are some smaller ones too, but these are the five major ones. And these all have been focused on pay equity issues in different ways, even before this initiative. But we were able to bring everyone together to break down silos and to really create synergy together to be honest and transparent about the problem and to seek solutions. So, for example, one of the things that we were able to do is way before any of the states were requiring it, we insisted in the reform movement that hiring postings include the salary range and that it be a reasonable salary range, not tens of thousands of dollars, of a wide range from zero through whatever, but something that really reflected the position. And so that's one of the things to be able to be transparent about whether or not you have a paid family medical leave policy and to do implicit bias training and hiring committees. Those are some of the interventions we've been able to embed, which is very important. The more you can bake it in, the more impact you have. And
Yeah.
then we've been able to aggregate all the data that's being produced by these professional groups and create snapshots every 3 years to show progress and sometimes not progress. And to work with labor economists and to really do amazing longitudinal studies.
And are you finding progress? Are you finding not progress?
Yeah, so yes, we are finding progress. It is not uniform, as I've indicated. And when we see that there's a slipping backwards, it allows us to have that accountability, to have an honest conversation, and then to focus more energy on the sector that is having the challenge.
Yeah.
And whether it means training more female identified and non-binary people in negotiation skills, and working more with the hiring committees to be aware of these issues. And when we started off about 10 years ago, we had to teach people what pay equity was. They didn't even know what it was. Today, people know that. So now we can dig down into the nuance and try to do better. But I want to point out, by the way, the secular data, which we should all be aware of and horrified by, is that the gap is widening in the last 2 years.
Yeah. Unfortunately, not surprising, as it mirrors probably other values that are abound.
Yes.
I'm sort of curious when you see progress or lack of progress, does it apply to a specific, as you said, sector? Like, is it the rabbis? Is it the cantors? Is it the executive directors? I mean, what are there trends within those positions?
So we go even more granular than that. Thank God we're not seeing it like in an entire sector, like rabbis, cantors, but rather we're because we break it down by the size of the congregation. It depends on how the data is collected. And, some of these groups also do how long the person's been in the profession. So the type of role they have. So we're really able to go down to a very granular level. And right now we're in the process of collecting all the data that's been collected, and then we're going to have our labor economist aggregating it, and then we'll be able to say something a little bit more pointed about it.
And are those reports accessible to the wider public if people were interested in reading them?
Yes, we make sure that we publish them and that they are available. So the last three are on the WRJ website, and everybody will get that link with the recording of this today.
Oh, good. Great. I'm sure some people will be interested to read that. Obviously, this Reform Pay Equity Initiative is sort of like an extension of the wider gender equity work that you have been doing for decades. So, can you talk a little bit about that wider work and some of the other initiatives that you've been doing?
Absolutely. So in our work, we kind of have two buckets. We focus on the direct support of our rabbi members. That is pastoral, that's educational, that's consultations, that's creating literally a network to support one another. And then on the outward facing agenda, we have different portfolios that we focus on. Right now and for the last 10 more plus years, we've been especially focused on pay equity. An outgrowth of pay equity, WRN specifically has focused and taken ownership of the paid family medical leave initiative project. We've created a whole host of resources that can be used by anyone, including model language for contracts, for employee handbooks. We have educational videos. We have conversation guides. Really an amazing suite of materials there. And then we've also, over the decades, but especially over the last 10 years, dug into accountability and repair. And we're a major stakeholder voice in the reform movement in the Me Too reckoning, really, and the follow through of accountability and repair that's happened within the reform movement. And it's something that at the same time it is sad and heartbreaking. It's also very hopeful in that there has been so much transparency, so much repair, so much accountability. Of course, not it is impossible to do complete repair. And I think that's very important that there'll always be people who've been harmed, who cannot come to accountability and repair. But at the same time, a great deal has been done, and it has created a model for the religious world. I'm not even going to say the Jewish world.
Mhm.
And I'm very proud of the people who came forward, even though it was hard to confront this, both the people who were harmed and the people who lead the organizations who took responsibility for that harm. A lot of good people did a lot of repair for things that were harmful to other people, and we're very grateful for that.
Yes, I'm glad that repair and atonement and forgiveness is such a central part of Judaism so that we can do that work. Um,
Yes.
You said earlier that the reform movement is governed by a code of ethics. I think in an earlier conversation, you may have referred to me, you talked about a smicha document and about how that has evolved over time and how
Mm.
WRN has been involved in that evolution. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, that's an interesting story. So I just want to pull apart two different things. So the Reform rabbis who are members of the Central Conference of American Rabbis are beholden to a very extensive ethics code and ethics process. It can be found on their website. And you can read the ethics code. If God forbid you have a complaint, you can speak to someone who will help you understand whether or not you can lodge a complaint. And separate from that, and I want to urge all people who are involved in organizations, Jewish organizations, and especially congregations, you should have a separate ethics code that really helps people understand how they should behave and processes to be able to step up when there is a problem, whether it's disrespectful behavior or something more egregious. And then separate from that, Reform rabbis, just like any rabbi, when we are ordained, we receive a document referring to our smicha, to our ordination. This document is a bit more special, perhaps, than a graduation certificate, but intrinsically, that's what it is. Um, Believe it or not, that when Sally Priesand was ordained in 1972, the faculty at the Cincinnati campus where she had studied did not come to agreement about what should be on her smicha document in terms of the Hebrew um, in her title. And so, since the time of Rashi, that a historic title of um, Moreno Harav, it has been used. And Sally did not receive this auspicious title. They were the faculty was concerned about using the Hebrew word for Rav. Of course, today we talk about Rabbah, a female word for a woman rabbi. Back then, there was no such thing as a woman rabbi, so there was no word. But she received an empty tube,
Oh my goodness.
actually, on the day. She was ordained, fully kosher, but it was not prepared in time and it was not given to her. And so the document she received was kind of downgraded in her title. It was factual, but it wasn't the auspicious title. And it was changed. And that day forth, every woman between 1972 and 2016 who was ordained um, received the substandard version. And this is one of the things that Hebrew Union College HUC has recognized and has made repair. So there have been several WRN members over the years who have requested the proper title for the change to be made, and it was never done. And actually, before I came into my position, I started to work on this and then really dug down in my position, and we got it done. And today, that the rabbis have a choice of how they want to be referred to. This is part of the ongoing evolution of that document. Today, there's even a non-binary version. And so it reflects people's truest identities and they're equal. So it's a beautiful mix of both. And we're proud of that. And that was a small thing, but it was very important because of what it represented. It represented all of the inequalities that we have all lived with and fought against throughout our careers.
Yeah. I mean, 34 years, that's a long time.
Yes,
I
and
know.
yeah, and by the way, HUC as part of their repair, they gave to whoever wanted it. Some people didn't want it, but many people did. A second document to replace the first document with the to have now the proper title. And and this was part of the fullest repair because it was also problematic because many of us were ordained by people who did sexual harassment and abuse,
Hmm.
and whose signatures were on our original documents, smicha documents. And so we were not only offered fresh documents, and some people didn't want them. Some people wanted the old document hanging next to the new document, and some people just wanted the new document. So yeah, it had to be individualized because, of course, people deserve the repair the way they want the repair. But then we were offered an affirmation of ordination, so a secondary symbolic ordination ceremony. And some people participated in that and found that very healing. I personally found that very healing because I knew the person who ordained me was a harasser and had harmed many people, many people. And And in fact, it's very sad for me to say this because the rabbi who did that ceremony of repair for me, Rabbi Dr. Andrea Weiss, just died a few days ago, will be buried tomorrow, and is, really, um, it means a great deal to me that she was able to do that for me on behalf of HUC.
Yeah, my condolences to you and to the community.
Yeah, thank you.
I mean, what you're talking about here, is about, to like raise it up to the 30,000 foot level. It's about these widely held perceptions about what the rabbinate is and what rabbinic leadership should look like. And obviously, you're working to change the face of what that is by all the things that you've talked about, and I believe some more. I mean, how are you going about doing that?
Oh, over the years, WRN has done it in all sorts of ways. So, even talking about the 45-year history, some of the original women, including Rabbi Presand, hit the road and went out to communities and spoke from the bima and taught just to prove that the ground was not going to open up and swallow them. And that people would survive if their rabbi was a woman. And of course, then in turn, the cantors did similar things, Barbara Oswald being the first cantor ordained. We continue to do this. For instance, one of our members came up with a hashtag campaign. This is what a rabbi looks like. Rabbi Leah Berkowitz, who's brilliant and one of our past leaders. She came up with this, and with her permission, really leaned into it, to help people. And frankly, this is important in terms of AI, in terms of Google searches, and all sorts of technology, because this shapes our understanding of what our world looks like. And if you, we have our implicit bias. And the world around us has the implicit bias that they expect a man with a beard and a black suit when you say rabbi. And part of that is owning up to our own implicit bias. And frankly, for we who are on the liberal spectrum, the progressive spectrum, even in Orthodoxy, throughout the whole beautiful diversity of Judaism, we all hold bias and implicit bias. And we think we're progressive. And that's a bad combination because when you know you're not progressive, you know you hold the bias. When you think you're progressive, you don't you're afraid to confront the bias. And so it's important to know that rabbis, cantors, educators, professionals, lay leaders can look like the beautiful diversity of Judaism in all the genders, in all the ways we look, and all the ways we act, and the ways we interact with one another. And that's important that our Jewish community is led by people who reflects the community.
100%. Couldn't agree more. You said earlier, there are two tenets to the work that you do. There's the supporting of the members, and then there's the advocacy. And you've just laid out all these advocacy initiatives that you're doing. Have your tactics for advocacy changed over time?
Yes, for sure. Our advocacy became much more outward facing. We did this advocacy work for decades before we became more outward facing with it, especially even in the public press and things like that. And it was with the Me Too movement, it really gave us permission to come out of the private conversations into the public space. And it was important. It was important for the people who had been harmed. It was important for the reform movement to confront these things publicly and transparently. And and we are still, and I think this is the success, is that we are still friends and partners and co-creators of the reform movement with the same institutions and leaders that we both called out and called in. And I think that's taken a lot of work on both sides, but it's something we should be proud of and be able to model to others. That you can go through that hard struggling with each other for good value-driven reasons and still look each other in the face and with love and compassion, knowing that we do a lot of other good work in partnership and that we will again.
That's a real challenge these days.
It is.
I think when we live in a world that is so divided in opinion and so polarized, and like, how do you continue to hold a big tent where all that pluralism can coexist where you don't agree? What are the things that make you successful in doing that?
Well, I think it's Jewish values. I think ultimately we're a Jewish community. It's not just the Reform community. The Jewish community, we have to hang together. We're going through unbelievably hard times right now. We need each other. We may not always see the same solutions. We may not always see the same type of Judaism, but ultimately we're Jews together. And if we don't, we will cannibalize each other if we get too caught up on fighting each other. And that can't be. We can't have that.
100%. I imagine both based on your personal wealth of experience and in your role as WRJ, like you are a leader in the Jewish community at large. And how do you decide where to put your energies, and how do you decide, not in terms of only what WRN's doing, but in terms of what the wider Jewish community might be tackling? How do you decide like what to get involved with and where to put your time?
That's a great question, and one that I think every leader today struggles with every single day. WRN, we're a mission-driven organization. We have a mission statement. We have 45 years of experience in this space, and we try to stay in our lane. We really do. Mission creep will kill an organization because you will get spread so thin, and it's easy enough to get spread thin when you're doing your mission. And you have to have confidence that there are other people leading in ways that are competent and impactful, and that's okay. So I know that National Conference Jewish Women, that they are handling reproductive rights, and we always partner, we always amplify. I know that they're doing that work. I don't need to do that work. We have done that work over decades. I don't need to create something from scratch when they are expert and have the program for that. But I have to do my work. And right now, so much of the Jewish community appropriately is focused on Israel, is focused on anti-Semitism. But the equity issues are still there. And if we
Mhm.
want our leaders and people to be able to step up to today's challenges and the next challenges that are coming down the road, we need to treat the people within our communities correctly, equitably, safely, respectfully, to be able to rise to those challenges, so that we are not burnt out, because the problems alone can burn us out. We don't need the additional layers of being marginalized. And so this is what I need to do right now. That's good for all of us.
Yes. We can't ignore Israel, though, like you said, because
No,
it has been one of the biggest issues facing the entire Jewish community, but also and especially clergy over the last 2 years. And it's ongoing with what's going on now in this escalated war with Iran. Um, how are you supporting your community at this time?
absolutely. So we support one another. I mean, that's the beauty of working with rabbis, so that we have closed forums where our members can say, well, what are you doing about XYZ? What prayer are you offering this Shabbat? In terms of Israel, I have this challenge. And we support them directly if somebody, wants counsel for myself or wants to be networked with other people with a similar problem. Sometimes those challenges are, good things, happy things, like I'm changing positions and I just need to figure out how I do XYZ. So my career is transforming. Or sometimes it's their personal lives, for better or worse, are transforming and they want that support. And it can be something finite or something major that's happening. And we can use the power of our network and of our individual leaders to support.
Yeah.
We even have retired rabbis who give their time to support rabbis in their communities if they're facing illness or other crisis, to be able to remotely teach or to write a bulletin article or step in to tutor a bar mitzvah student for 1 week when somebody has a cancer treatment or something like that. So it's a community that really helps one another.
It feels like that's what women have always done best, right? Like it's the village. It's the
Yeah, it's a
village that
beautiful village.
it's a beautiful village. I mean, as you said, you first became involved with WRN when you were a student. You were then a co-president, then you were a past president member, now you're executive director. I mean, you've been doing this work for a really long time. I'm sort of interested in, taking on this role, being a leader of a rabbinic leader of an organization as opposed to a congregation, and you're sort of making that move,
Mm.
and what that comes with.
Mm. Well, I was a very fulfilled, very happy congregational rabbi for 18 years. And I was at a juncture where I wanted to do something different. I had my own small pulpit here in New Jersey and worked with wonderful lay leaders. But I was ready for something else and maybe a bigger team, I was thinking. And so at the same time, Rabbi Jackie Koch Ellenson was stepping down and retiring from the position. She was our first professional executive director and was our emerita. And I kept reading the job description. And I never imagined leaving congregational work. And in fact, I started to go to my mentors and advisors, my friends who advised me. And I wanted to know specifically if I left congregational work and I did this type of work, could I go back to congregational work or would this derail that part of my career? Because at that time, the rabbinate was a more reified kind of rabbinate than it is today. Today, there's much more fluidity about types of rabbinates and coming in and out of them and doing many different things. And all of them immediately said, oh, that's not a big deal anymore. Don't worry about that. But then they almost all of them paused and said, why would you want to work for that organization? Those issues are done. Everything's equal. They're just, those women are just kind of hanging on to the past. You don't worry, you don't want to do that. And frankly, it got me so angry. I applied for the job. I was so angry. Well, like you're telling me everything, 11 years ago or even today, like everything's equal? That's crazy. And so it almost like wrote my application because I was so angry as I was listing back to them all the things I saw that weren't equal.
You were
Uh,
moved into action, it sounds
I
like.
was, I was, but I'm so grateful for the years that I was a congregational rabbi. I think, frankly, it's the best training anybody can have. My congregants and my mentors taught me so much. What it means to multitask and what it means to really listen to individuals and to create solutions and to, do things on the fly because everything you thought that was going to work out one way suddenly gets derailed and you're doing something completely different at the drop of a hat. I'm
I
grateful
also
for all of
imagine
it.
that it makes you a richer leader of your organization because you have experienced what your members experience, right? You've lived through that. You have this deep understanding of all those nuances. So, you're a better representative of them, and a better support network and confidant and all those things because you've sat in those shoes.
I hope so. And I certainly, as my rabbinic training, gives me the pastoral eye
Mm.
to always be thinking, how does this fall on people? Who needs support? Who needs a heads up that we're about to do X, Y, and Z because they're going to feel it differently than the rest of the membership. I have tried, I've really tried to bring that pastoral eye to this work. It doesn't always fall where you want it to, like anybody. I'm human. But I think that training helped me a lot.
Yeah. Well, you are in the midst of another transition, as you will be stepping down as executive director of WRN at the end of June, and handing over the reins to your successor. So, congratulations.
Yes.
You know, we've had a few leaders in our collective who have been in a place of transition while they've been with us, and everyone has had a slightly different process. So I'm sort of curious to learn about your process and if you've even begun to contemplate what might be your next chapter.
Mm. So I definitely have a little bit of the Mary Poppins thing going on where I know when it's time for me, I feel a shift and I know I need a new challenge. I'm not flighty in any way, but 11 years later, I feel like I have addressed the things I wanted to address. I think I'm ready for a new challenge. I know I'm ready for a new challenge. And so with my leaders, I have created an 18-month ramp, which is crazy. I know those of you who function in the business world, um, you know, 2 weeks and you're moving on. But it was very important that we capture the rabbinic hiring season. I know that's kind of funny to think, but the window between Labor Day and like now is the height of the rabbinic uh, hiring season. And so I knew my organization needed to do some reflective work, which any organization should do before they hire the new number one person. And so we did that with a consultant. We did the reflection of learning from our members what really matters in our work, which was very exciting actually, because the results came back that what we do is exactly what they wanted. It affirmed that we were in very firm ground, and it was good to see. That resulted in a job description, then a very equitable, values-driven search. Only WN rabbis were eligible to apply, so it's a very small pond of people who might be looking to do something new. And I would say that's also a little hard. It's a little, I was not involved in the search committee as I should not be. There was a firewall. But it breaks all of our hearts to have to say no to anybody who's a member and a WN rabbi. So by the setup, it's quite hard. But the discerning process went forward. And by the way, like they had the uh, CVs anonymatized before the committee saw them, the first reading, so that it would be equitable in that way. And so they wouldn't have that. So that built in was part of the equity work that we do, for example. And now Rabbi Rachel Van Tyne, who likes to be called either Rabbi Van Tyne or RVT, is going to be my successor July 1st. So I'm still on that runway. And this is now, I'm still working. I'm still got piles of work to do, very happily. Eventually shift to some discernment and figuring out what I'm doing next. And I trust that I will find a impactful outlet for what I do next.
I have no doubt whatsoever. Um, just shifting gears a little bit, I'd love to talk about your participation with Illuminates Collective and sort of what it's offered you over the last year and a half, what it's offering you in this time, a little bit about the relationships that you've formed there, anything that you might like to share.
Mm, absolutely. First of all, like what a gift to be able to continue the partnership with Illuminate based on the grant we got so many years ago. And I've attended programs and things over the years for Illuminate very happily. So it's really an honor to be part of the cohort. And the fact that it is an international cohort, and that it includes people from Israel, and leaders of all different types, doing very different type of work, is exciting. It's very exciting. And to have the Illuminate professionals and Ruth Messenger guiding us in our learning and learning from one another, but especially during this last year and a half to be in deep conversation with our Israeli colleagues. WN has Israeli members too. But it's different when you have a facilitated cohort to be able to bring forth challenges and problems and to learn together, um, and and to see how what they're doing on the ground, especially during this very difficult time. It was quite a
Yeah.
gift, and it builds my leadership. We build each other up. We learn from experts. It is a true gift.
Oh, I'm so happy to hear that. It's always our pleasure to be supporting the work that all of you are doing. I'm not sure how many Reform rabbis we have listening today or how many of your members we have, but I suspect that many others on this call believe in what the work that you're doing and would love to support you. How can they do so?
Well, thank you. As I always say, that this work helps, of course, immediately reform rabbis, but also the reform movement. And we have been very influential throughout all of the Jewish community, both in the nonprofit organizational work and also in the religious world. I've had the pleasure of serving as an advisor on projects at Yeshivat Maharad and coming in to guest teach, and in all the seminaries in different ways. So our work helps everyone. And I really want folks to take advantage of our free resources. The question isn't, are we equitable? Are we doing this? It's not a yes or no question. It really is, how do we know? How do we know in what ways are we being equitable and what ways can we do much better? Are we keeping data? Are we talking to people about their experiences? Do we have ethics codes? And are we prepared to uphold them? It is not helpful just to shout out into the universe, give us an ethics code, and somebody from another congregation or organization gives you theirs, and then you pop it up on your website and you say, we're done. That's not going to help you. At a time when someone has felt harmed in any way, minor or major, in your organization, you have to be prepared. And of course, supporting WRN. We hope our resources enrich many people. Even if you worked in the secular world, you can look at our resources for pay equity, for paid family medical leave, and you'll find things there that will help you. There are things that you can bring to your congregation and or to your organization. And the nice thing is that we are like that third voice, so that you don't have to be put on the spot. You can just say, I learned this from WRN. Could we look at it together? It doesn't have to be your personal crusade. You just need to shed some light on it. So I hope people will take advantage of that. And of course, I'm always available for consultation.
Well, thank you, Mary. And I hope people will visit your website to learn from your resources, to spread the word, to make a donation if they're so moved. We really appreciate the work that you're doing on behalf of all women in the Jewish community. It was such a pleasure speaking with you today, and I want to thank everyone for listening in. Our next Illuminating conversation is scheduled for April 16th at noon, so I hope you'll mark your calendars, and invitations and details about those will be going out shortly. I also hope you'll mark your calendar for Wednesday, April 29th. It is going to be our annual luncheon in celebration of 30 years of our organization, and we would love to have you join us with us. Details are on our website. Also, there are lots of emails circulating, so please be on the lookout. Mary, thank you again for your time today and for educating us on all the incredible work that you do. We're very grateful.
Thank you, Rachel.